If I hold it right here, maybe we can hear. Now, I may be the only one here in this flyer contest. I've done this contest a few times before. I'm generally the only one that's actually telling a true story, and that's probably why I've never won. But they said you have to have a name for this story, and it really is as much a story as just relating things that happened to me. But I called it Sausage on a Stick because it dealt with sausage on a stick at the time. That was the beginning of the process for me. I love to go to rodeos. San Antonio Rodeo's coming up. I've been going over there for years and years. You come to an event like the rodeo or even here, you know the best food you're going to get is something that comes on a stick, right? Anything good on a stick. A couple of years ago over here, they had squirrel on a stick. Very tasty. Very tasty. I didn't even come from an actual booth either. It came from one of the back streets over there. Not sure whether it was real food or not. They didn't worry about taking a ticket either. So. Last year they did have Spam on a stick too. I haven't seen that guy this year, but my favorite thing to get is a sausage on a stick, and you know they have the little roll on the bottom that gets the grease, and then you can squeeze it in, you know, when you're done. A little bit of mustard. So I'm at the rodeo and I'm going to get me a sausage on a stick. It's the every day go through there and get one. They have one that's like a foot long too. It's about this. It just brings joy to my heart. That's for sure. So anyway, when you go to these events like this, you know you've got to wait in line at the food booths every time. It's like a women at the bathrooms at a concert, right? I'm just going to be out the side. But I'm in line for sausage on a stick, and I'm going to get me a sausage on a stick, and I've started to think over the years of all the sausage on a stick that I've gotten and how good they've tasted and how they make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside for days and days. And you know, you got to squeeze them up a little bit on the stick so you don't actually bite the stick. And then when you're done, you've got a weapon. So it's a perfect thing. But anyways, I'm in the line for the sausage on a stick, and there's probably 10 folks, and the line's moving pretty slow, and it just gives me time to dream and think and plan how I'm going to attack the sausage. And I'm moving up kind of one person at a time, and then there's about 4 people left between me and the sausage on a stick, and I'm heading up, and it just my brain is just filled with these thoughts of sausage on a stick and how enjoyable it's going to be and how good. And I got next in line to get one. There's a little set of stairs, and then that guy goes, and I'm next, and I'm starting to climb these 2 or 3 little stairs, and I can just, my mouth is watering for that sausage on a stick, and I get up to the platform, and the man next to me says, "Are you ready to go?" I said, "Yes, sir, I'm ready for it now." And he gave me a big old shove between the shoulder blades and pushed me out right on top of one of those big brown bulls. And I was sitting on top of a big brown bull, and he said, "Open the gate!" And he took off. In about 0.8 seconds, the gate was opened up, and the bull took about 2 steps out, realized somebody's on his back. He starts to get mad. And about 1.4 seconds, about 1.4 seconds, I'm still on the back of the bull, and I'm starting to think in my head, this ain't so bad. I can take this one all the way. About 1.8 seconds, my feet are up this way, my head is down this way, the bull's over there. And about 1.9 seconds, I'm flat on my back on the ground, and at exactly 2.0 seconds, the bull steps back and steps with his back foot right on my shoe. And at that moment, I had probably the worst medical condition I've ever had in my entire life. I had a sideways toe. And if you can imagine like a big juicy grapefruit and you hit it with a hammer and how it just squishes out on the side, that's what happened to my food, and I have my little pinky toe was sticking straight out. And I would lay there, and for a minute I was just stunned. You know, you fall on your back, the wind knocks out of me, I was just stunned, laying there for a second, and then I looked at him, oh no! I got a sideways toe! Hanging right out the side of my busted open boot. Well, you know those guys at the rodeo, emergency crew runs in, lickety-split, these 2 guys, the bullfighters are there, they're scaring away the bull, and here comes the 2 EMTs, they come out, one of them's working up here. I said, no, it's black, no. They put a neck brace on me, the other EMT's down there at my foot, and he said, what's the problem? I said, I got a sideways toe, and he looked at it, he said, now, if you can make an EMT toe up, you know you have a bad problem. And there was a sideways toe hanging right on the side of that boot. And they put me on the little gurney, and they took me in the back, and the doctor came rushing up, big old cowboy hat, handlebar mustache. I think it was actually a vet since it's a rodeo. But anyway, he takes one look at that sideways toe and he said, "Nurse, bring me that brass ring and that string and tequila." And I said, "Ooh, tequila, now we're talking." And he said, "No, it's for me." And I said, "What are you going to do with that brass ring?" He said, "You shouldn't look." I said, "Oh, okay." And he took that little brass ring and he set it right on my sideways toe. And I looked at that and I said, "Well, what's that going to do?" He said, just wait. And I looked at the brass ring, and tied to the brass ring was a little piece of string about 8 feet long. And that little piece of string ran down and tied onto a piece of clothesline, and that was about 10 feet long. And that clothesline tied onto a half-inch piece of sisal rope. And that half-inch piece of sisal rope hooked to about a 1-inch piece of rope, and then that 1-inch piece of rope trailed on out the front of the tent and hooked onto a logging chain. And then that logging chain was hooked on the back. And right about the time I noticed that logging chain hooked on the back of that big 350 pickup truck, he said, "Haul it out, Joe!" And that big diesel engine cranked up on that 350 and he threw gravel and pulled down. That's when I passed out. And I came to a couple of minutes later, or maybe an hour, I don't know, and this cute little nurse was over the top of me with a needle and thread, you know. And I looked down and I was scared to look, but apparently that ring had put my sideways toe back to straight. And I said, "What are you going to do with that needle and thread?" And she said, "Well, we got to fix them boots. You can't go dancing with a big hole in your boots. Not bad." So I tell this to you today as more of a cautionary tale. Number one, make sure you know where the end of the line is that you're getting into. And number two, when you go down to the rodeo, if you happen to get a sideways toe, make sure they have a little brass ring and about 8 feet of string that eventually gets attached to a big Ford 350 diesel bumper.